Hi everybody, welcome back. We're in Jeremy Duff, Elements of New Testament Greek. We're in chapter 10, section 10.1.3. We're on pages 114 and 115, and we are thinking today about complex sentences and using relative pronouns. Now what I want to do today is to give you some examples of how to use relative pronouns, and I'm actually going to recommend a slightly different method to that which Jeremy Duff seems to encourage in this section. What Jeremy Duff suggests is that you self-consciously start by breaking down the complex sentence into its two constituent simple sentences, and there's a lot of value in that. You certainly need to get to the point where you can understand how that works, but I actually think there's a slightly better and more intuitive way of working out most sentences like this, which makes use of the way in which English and Greek relate to each other at this point, how the relative pronoun functions. And I want to show you that method today. So we're going to get started with this example. Here's how it goes. Number one, this is actually example one from the halfway practice on page 115. I'm just going to work through a bunch of these in this video, and just to show you how this method works in practice and how to translate sentences like this. So here goes. Blepo ton doulon hon ekalesen. Blepo ton doulon hon ekalesen. Now, as you're reading through the sentence, when you're doing these exercises, the first thing I want you to notice is, okay, where's the relative pronoun? You've got to just identify that first, because that's a challenge, that's a new thing for you. And here it is. There's the relative pronoun. How do you identify that? Well, it's a short word with a rough breathing at the beginning, so there's a good chance it's going to be a relative pronoun. And you notice it looks like an article with the tau missing. And you remember the paradigm for the formation of the relative pronoun in Greek, which you saw in the previous video. That's how you identify a relative pronoun. It looks, almost always it looks like the article, except in some nominatives with the tau missing. That's basically it. And neuter accusative singular as well. Okay, so hon, and we're going to parse that in a second, but I'm not going to worry about it for now. What I want you to do, and here's the key step, which is somewhat different from what Jeremy Duff recommends. What I'm going to recommend is, when you see the relative pronoun, you write immediately this. Who, whom, which. Just write that down underneath it like that. And I hope you're in the habit of working out your examples like this on paper so that you're able to see how you're interacting with the language. And it will take you longer first time, but you're much more likely to get it right, and it will save you the second, third, fourth, fifth time of getting it wrong the first half dozen times, because you'll get it right first time. Just write down who, whom, which. Why do you do that? Firstly, because you're going to need one of those three words in this sentence, because this means one of them, who, whom, or which. Secondly, because this starts to exploit the way in which the relative pronoun works in English and the way in which it's similar to how it works in Greek. Let me show you what I mean. Once you've done that, then crack on with the rest of the sentence in the normal way. Blepo ton doulon, I don't need to navigate you through that. Blepo, I see ton doulon, the slave, accusative, the object of this verb. And then you've got another verb over here, ekalesen. Well, this is from kaleo, and it means, well, it's aorist, isn't it? Because you've got the epsilon augment, you've got the sigma suffix, and therefore we're going to translate it as an English past tense and third person singular, so it's he called. Notice there is a slight quirk with the form of this one. You might have been expecting an aorta there, and indeed you would in many examples, but kaleo sometimes does strange things, and Duff has included this just to remind you of that very slight irregularity in the aorist. Okay, I see the slave, then you've got who, whom, which, and he called. Now, here's where you start to see the benefit of identifying these three words, because as you write this down in this way, you can probably already see how you're going to complete this sentence. Can you already see how you can do it? If you had to pick one of these words and slap it in there, I see the slave whom he called. But it's important to see why this is the case. Now, this is the benefit of the Duff method, if you like. You'll you'll break the sentence down into two distinct parts, and I'm about to show you that now. But you can see the value of the intuitive value of doing this. Now, what's going on here is that the relative pronoun hon is serving as the object of the verb he called. It's the object because it's accusative. And the crucial thing to remember about the case of a relative pronoun is that a relative pronoun adopts the case required by its location in its clause. The relative pronoun is in the relative clause, the dependent clause. Go back to 2 videos previously to this if you don't know what those words mean. And always the case of a noun or a pronoun or anything else is determined by the way it functions in its clause. So obviously this word hon is going to have a case determined by how it functions in that clause, and in this case it's the object of this verb, so it's in the accusative case. Now, as Duff points out, we're on page 114, the relative pronoun also has to match with its antecedent. And the antecedent, in this case, is the slave. And the slave is masculine and singular. And therefore this is going to be masculine and singular too. And of course, people get all kinds of confusion because they think, oh, this has got to match with this, and then they can't remember whether it's supposed to match in number and case, or number and gender, or case and gender, and they think, oh, is it supposed to match in all 3, number, case and gender? No, just think about the logic of the sentence. Always, 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 the case of a noun or a pronoun or anything else that has a case, like an adjective, is determined by its function in its clause or in its sentence. And this is in the relative clause because it's the relative pronoun. So its case is going to be determined by that. So this is accusative. So he called him is how it would be if it were, let's say, a pronoun. But we need to construct an English sentence which gives us the meaning according to which the one who you're calling is this. Or to put it another way, that called has as its object the relative pronoun hon. And the way we do that in English is, I see the slave whom he called. And now you just learned something that you may not have known previously about English grammar. What's the difference between who and whom? Well, who is used for nominative cases, and whom is used for everything else, accusative, genitive and dative. And we don't normally think about nominative, accusative, genitive and dative in English because most English nouns don't decline by case, but relative pronouns do. Actually, other pronouns do as well, like he and him. Like, he saw him. He is the object, him is the he is the subject, him is the object. That declines as well, according to case. Anyway, that's where we get to, I see the slave whom he called. And that's how we translate this sentence. Give me 1 second, I'll rub this off, and we'll take another example, and I'll show you some more. Okay, here's a second example. Number 2, Hupage ek tu oiku en ho a. Hupage ek tu oiku en ho a. This is example number 2 from the halfway practice on page 115. Let's have a look at this. And as I said previously, what's the first thing we're going to do as we're running our way through this? Oh, we're going to spot. There's the relative pronoun. So you underline it, and what do you write? You write who, whom, which. Why do you do that? Because you're going to need one of those words, probably in that kind of location, and this is the quick way, the simple way, and the intuitive way to get a grip on how this sentence is going to make its way into English. Then we go through it in the normal kind of way, and once more, I don't need to labour this point. Hupage is a verb. It's actually an imperative singular from hupago, and it means therefore depart. in the sense of depart as a command. Ek to oiku, well, there's a preposition with its complement. Ek, from, in the sense of out from. So depart from, governs a noun in the genitive case. To oiku, from oikos, from the, what's oikos? Oiku, come on, you know that. From the house. Right. N, ho, a. How can 5 letters be so confusing? Don't worry. N means in or on or something of that kind. A is a verb. You know, this is from Amy. You can tell because of the circumflex up here, which distinguishes it from the word a, which means if. And this is second person singular, and it means you are. Right. Now, depart from the house, in or on. Well, you're going to be in. Let's make it easier for ourselves. Who, whom, which, you are. Now, can you see now the value of writing who, whom, which here? So that it gives you an intuitive feel for how this sentence is going to work out. Depart from the house in which you are. See? Now, let's not run away with ourselves. Let's work out why this is the case. Okay, depart from the house. N is a preposition which governs a noun, in which case, you know this already, dative case. Bing. And guess what? The relative pronoun, I'm going to ditch this pen because it's not really working. It's a bit faded, isn't it? The relative pronoun, therefore, is in the dative case because it is part of the complement. In fact, it just is the complement of N. Remember the rule that I said before. The case of a relative pronoun, like the case of anything, is determined by how it functions in its part of the sentence, in its clause. No different from any other noun or pronoun or adjective or anything else. So it needs to match with its antecedent, but it doesn't generally match in case with its antecedent. The previous example, it just happened to, but on this occasion it doesn't. This is dative because of this. But what's the antecedent of it? Well, what does it match with in the sentence? It's singular and it's masculine. Can you find anything else over here that's singular and masculine? Of course you can. Oikos. Here it's genitive because the case of this is determined by its function within this part of the sentence, this clause, as the complement of ek, genitive. But this is in the dative case, governed by its function within this clause. They match, of course, in gender, masculine, and in number, singular. So that's how the structure of the sentence breaks down. Now, how are you going to translate this then? Well, you just need to come up with an English translation which reflects the fact that the antecedent of this pronoun is the house, and which uses the correct one of these three. Who, whom, or which. Well, if the antecedent is a house, it's an inanimate thing, and therefore it's not going to be who or whom, is it? It's going to be which, because that's the relative pronoun we use in English for inanimate objects. Okay, another important principle. And it's just a neat way in which English relative pronouns interact with Greek relative pronouns. So what we're going to be left with is depart from the house in which you are. Easy. Yeah? Nailed it. Let's do a couple more examples just to make sure. Back in 1 second. Okay, welcome back. Number 3, let's take a look at this. On the same page still, page 115. Pu estin ta poteria ha philumen? Question mark. Pu estin ta poteria ha philumen? Question mark. A couple of other interesting grammatical points here which we'll spot as we work our way through. But the first thing I want you to do, where's the relative pronoun? Let's underline that. Let's do with it what we normally do. 1, 2, 3, here it is. And so we write who, whom, and which there, because we're going to need one of those words in translating this sentence, and there's a good chance that it'll appear round about there in the sentence. Okay, now let's work our way through this. Pu estin ta poteria. Well, here's the verb estin, Amy a estin. It's third person singular. It means he, she, it is. Pu is where. Where is ta poteria? Well, that's plural, which is interesting because that's singular. Think about that for a second. It comes from poterion, and it means the cups. Where is the cups? What's going on there? This is one of those interesting grammatical features that's in this sentence. Neuter plural nouns take a, very good, singular verb. Not always, but very, very often. Of course, there's all kinds of confusion in, I think it's Ephesians 2. Anyway, that's for an advanced Greek lesson. Where are the cups, then? Because that's how we must render this in English, because in English, plural nouns do not take a singular verb, they take a plural verb. Where are the cups? Who, whom, or which? Now, philumen comes from phileo, philo, philes, phile, philumen, we love. And no surprise, because you're beginning with a question word, ending with a question mark. Right, now, can you see again the immense power of this method of translating sentences with relative clauses? You just slap who, whom, and which, and you can already see how the sentence is probably going to shake out by the time you've finished. And you recognise that where are the cups? Well, its cups are going to be the antecedent, because the number and the gender of this neuter plural matches with the number and the gender of this neuter plural. And it's going to be which, because in English that's how we refer to inanimate things, which, not who. Where are the cups? Which we love. Just works perfectly in English, doesn't it? Notice though that it works if you analyse it, because the which is the object of we love. We love the cups. Where are the cups? We love the cups. And as the object of this, you expect this to be in the accusative case, and indeed it is. Ha is the accusative plural relative pronoun, neuter relative pronoun in Greek. So where are the cups which we love? Really, really simple. Let's just do one more just to finish up. Okay, one more example of Greek into English. Here goes. Epistiousan gar to euangelio ho hoi apostoloi ekeruson. Epistiousan gar to euangelio ho hoi apostoloi ekeruson. Okay, as usual, what do? You bump into a relative pronoun, and especially at this stage when you're getting to grips with relative pronouns, you just underline it like that and write who, whom, which, like that. And then we go through and translate the rest of the sentence in the usual way. Epistiousan gar to euangelio. Well, that's gar, that's post positive, so it's going to come back here in English, and it probably means for or because. Epistiousan, well, it's from pistuo, aorist because of that. And an, elusase, elusene, elusame, elusate, elusan, third plural, for they believed to euangelio. Huh, interesting. Why is this in the dative case? Anybody remember? Yeah, back of the class. Well done, you're paying attention. The verb I believe, pistuo, takes an object in the dative case, in kind of the same way that we talk about believing in something. But we will just translate this. For they believed the euangelion, you know, that is, the gospel. Just a quick note on this, actually, and this is important interpretively in some instances. I think it's best not to translate this, they believed in the gospel, because that somewhat distances us from the notion that they're actually believing this thing. And it's important to maintain that. It's not just that they believed something about the gospel, they believed the gospel. And so don't let the fact that this is in the dative trick you into putting some preposition in here when you translate it into English. That's actually misleading, I think, certainly in this case and perhaps in others. For they believed the gospel, who, whom, which. Well, you've done that. You're probably going to need, well, you're definitely going to need one of those words. What do we got here? Hoi apostoloi ekeruson. Verb ekeruson comes from keruso, which means I preach. Epsilon augment, no sigma suffix. Third person plural or first singular. So I or they, and were preaching. And is this third plural or first singular? Well, very obviously, because of that. It's a nominative plural noun, the apostles, and that means that this is going to be third plural as well, which the apostles were preaching. Now I've already given the game away. For they believed the gospel which the apostles were preaching. Yeah, you see, it's really, really powerful just to slap those three words in there, because very, very often that's just exactly what you need. And what we need is which. But just pause now for a second. Think, why is that the case? Well, the case of this is governed by its function within its own clause. And so it's the thing being preached. It's the object. It's going to be accusative. And indeed it is. And it's got to agree in number and gender with its antecedent. What's the thing being preached? Well, is there anything in neuter singular in the previous clause, the independent clause? Of course there is. To euangelion. To euangelio, whoops, is neuter singular. And so the antecedent of this is this little baby. And now we construct an English sentence in which it's clear that the antecedent of this is the gospel, which is being preached. So they believe the gospel which the apostles were preaching. So straightforward. Okay, so that'll do us for going from Greek into English. Next video I'm going to do a whole bunch of these as well, going from English into Greek, and that's where you really discover whether you've understood this. So come back next time and we'll continue some of these halfway practice exercises, then crack on through this chapter. Okay, God bless. Keep working at this 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day, 5 or 6 days a week, and we'll have you reading the New Testament in Greek in no time. Bye for now.